Well, does God exist? Now we have the last argument, if you like, proving that God exists after the first cause argument, and the second one being the design argument, and the third one being the moral argument. And this fourth one, we would call it a personal argument, if you like. I mean, professors of universities will call it ontological argument. It's a philosophical argument for the existence of God. And I want to try and put this in the most personal manner I could find. Let us explore it in this way. After we've looked at the first three arguments, we have come to the conclusion that someone must have created the universe. Someone must be the first cause that created the effect. So something that has a beginning always has a beginner. And we draw the conclusion from there that there's got to be a universal, all-power, eternal, personal being out there. And the same conclusion can be drawn from the second argument about the design of our universe, that even the simple cell, simple living human cell shows an intelligence behind that, and that intelligence behind that goes beyond the actual material self in itself. It is created by someone outside this cell. And we use the iPhone as an example. And with the moral argument, we also finally concluded that there is a universal standard law, that an objective law that applies to every sane person in this world, and that this moral law, this universal moral law, must be provided by a moral law giver that is outside the system. So all these three arguments points to one conclusion, that it's got to be someone outside that system that created and sustained all these things that we see in this world. And we call it the natural world. And we call this person God. And this builds into our last argument, or this personal argument, with this logic that God, as that which is nothing greater can be thought of, it's the ultimate giver of law, the creator of the universe, and the designer of the universe. There's no other cause beyond him. And we argue that in our mind we use logic and we use reasoning to come to that conclusion, and that it exists in our mind. Even in the mind that doesn't know anything about the Bible, the God of the Bible, or person who has not even thought about God himself. Given all those first three arguments, we can say that a logical thinking person can plausibly conclude that there is something or someone out there. This last argument points to a personal self. If we believe, if we ascribe to the conclusion that's brought about in our last three topics, suggests that if it is in our mind, we have a certain belief that there is a greatest possible being that exists first in our logical mind, and if it exists in our mind, that it must exist in reality. Because what we're trying to do using logic and reason is to somehow explain reality, explain what we see in this natural world. And if it's concluded in our mind, then it must be the most plausible explanation of the real world. If it only exists in our minds, then according to this argument, then an even greater being or greater existence of this reality must be possible, because we see that in our minds. There must be one that exists both in our mind and in reality, because we now see that. Given this, then the God, impersonal, eternal, and most powerful God must exist, because we see that in our minds. We see this reality in our minds. Now this then lends itself to a lot of the personal experience that people experience when it comes to God. This in itself may not be an argument for the existence of God, because if you use this argument alone, it may not carry too much water, depending on the personal experience or depending on the person who's making that personal experience. For instance, if I share my personal experience with you, you have no idea who I am, you don't know what I've been doing, you can only take my word for it. But if you hear a similar testimony by somebody whom you either know or respect or idolize, the chances of it being more credible might be higher. So that's why this personal argument, if you like, must be used with the other three forms of argument. But from a personal point of view, I know I have personally experienced God. I know I have personally sought a worldview to understand the reality that I'm experiencing in this world. And from my personal perspective, many of the worldviews, many of the approaches to religion did not make any sense. Well, it did not give me a complete sense of reality. It did not give me a complete picture of the reality that I'm experiencing and that I'm observing in this world. And it's only with Christianity, and it's only with the God of the Bible, that, and only from the words of the Bible, I can now go beyond that limited understanding that I had previously. Now I can have a complete worldview based on Christian beliefs, based on the Bible, the God of the Bible's belief, that reality now starts to make sense, because this worldview, this Christian worldview, has given me the tool to understand not just the physical world, but also the super physical or the supernatural world. And it gives me a frame of reference to bring both the supernatural world in line with the natural world logically. Now, I'm just a simpleton that you may not know, but I can assure you there are a lot of many people out there, those in a public figure, those who are in politics, those who are in art, those who are in science, will share similar essence of their personal experience based on this Christian worldview. That is the only form that I could make sense. That this is the final argument that you, as a person who may be a seeker, who may be not quite sure, who indeed do not believe in God, will come to the realization that everything will fall into place given this world view. That is the best I can bring to some form of understanding bring to some insight to what the so-called personal argument is all about.